Welcome back to Jersey Matters. There is legislation right now being debated in Trenton that requires teen drivers to be better prepared before they get behind the wheel. AAA is actively advocating for this legislation. Here is Robert Sinclair, Public Affairs Manager for AAA Northeast. Well, thanks so much for your time. I hope you're going to have a great holiday. Let's start with the AAA advocating for new legislation in New Jersey. What exactly will this legislation do?
The legislation would mandate 50 hours of practice driving for young drivers, 16 and 17-year-old who have their learner's permit. It would also lengthen the time that they have to have their learner's permit to a year. They would not be able to get their full license until they had their permit for a year, and that 50 hours of supervised driving. Consider that New Jersey is one of only 3 states in the country that does not mandate supervised driving, and they're right there with Arkansas and Mississippi. And despite the fact that the statistics show overwhelmingly that younger drivers, 16 and 17-year-olds, have crashes far in disproportion to their representation in the driving population. So when they get these practice hours, and 50 hours really should be the minimum, the more hours, the better. When they get this practice, it makes them better drivers. Young drivers have problems because they lack the skills and the experience to be good drivers. And when you make good young drivers, you get good adult drivers and good older drivers. So there's a cascading positive effect when young drivers get this training. So we hope that the legislature will pass it during this lame duck session.
I know you've been following the legislation. Where does it stand now?
It's come out of committees in both houses, and there have been hearings, but and as far as we know, it's not scheduled for a vote yet. We hope that will happen.
You're hoping it's going to happen before the lame duck session is over. So you only have, when this airs, you'll have a week left, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen this week. So what are the odds? Is there any resistance to it?
Not as far as we know. We've testified as far as the legislation is concerned to really trying to convince the legislators that it behooves them, everybody out on the road, to have these kind of things in place. But I don't know what the holdup is.
Yeah, it sounds like it would just make the road safer. More importantly, I have 2 teenage boys that are getting ready to drive. I think that every parent in the state would want to make certain that their children are prepared and are as safe as can be when they're on the roads, both from themselves and from other teen drivers. And so I don't understand. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, I know you wanted to promote this legislation today. What is the holdup?
It's a good question. I know for a lot of parents, they see their children as getting a license as the opportunity for them to be independent and not have that burden of transporting them around. Young people are involved in a lot of activities. They're going after school, they're doing sports, they're doing tutoring, what have you. And until that youngster gets their own license, it's up to the parent to provide that transportation. I think many parents see that as the opportunity for that youngster to be independent, for them to be on their own, but they have to be prepared. The stats show overwhelmingly that young drivers are going to have crashes, and you really have to prepare them. You have to instill in them the seriousness of driving. Lloyd's of London Insurance Company says you're 25 times more likely to be killed in a car crash than you are in a plane crash. And youngsters, that number goes up even more. And parents have to realize they have to model good driving behavior when they are bringing that infant home from the hospital. There's an interesting public service announcement on the air right now that shows parents texting while they're driving. And then, the youngsters, when they start driving, they text when they drive. You have to teach them the good habits very, very early on so that they can be good drivers. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, from that Wednesday through Sunday of Thanksgiving, there was a doubling in the number of fatal crashes in New Jersey compared to last year. I think that's indicative of what needs to be done in microcosm, and hopefully it will happen in macrocosm, where we get more and better trained youngsters on the road.
Yeah, I have 4 kids, and the scariest moment in my life for each one of them is when they drove, because I have seen the statistics and I know how dangerous it is for young drivers. So I'm sure parents are watching this right now, and they can just call their state legislators, I would believe, or state senators, and say that they want this legislation. Let's move on for a second. We have things closing down again. Schools are going virtual in New Jersey because of Omicron, but it doesn't seem like it keeps people off the roads.
No, I think there's just such a pent-up desire for people to travel, to see friends and family, that they're taking advantage of it. Not a record number, but we're within 92% of the 2019 numbers, which were the record, with 110 million people traveling. 91% of those, or 100 million, are driving. About 2.5 million from New Jersey and 2.1 million will be driving. We're seeing increases in air travel of 184%, with more than 6 million flying. The other category that's not quite there, it's about close to 3 million. That's train, bus, and cruising. And it's the cruising where we're seeing some kind of pullback, I think, as a result of the surge of Omicron. Some of these ships are truly huge. They hold 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people. But those ships start to seem very small if someone is ill, and it starts to spread around very quickly. So we're seeing with AAA as one of the nation's largest leisure travel agencies, we're seeing not cancellations, but shifting of cruise times. A lot of folks are now planning cruises for the spring and summer of 2022. A lot of folks want to go overseas, travel internationally to take a river cruise, particularly in Germany. But in the U.S., we're cruising out of the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, the West Coast, and we like to go to the Caribbean. So that's kind of being delayed. Many of the companies are being very generous in that they're saying that you can change, no problem, no fees, no change fees or anything like that, and book for next year. But other than that one category, folks are really getting out there and traveling for this holiday.
The concern, getting back to the cars for a second, is when you have an increase in traffic in cars, that means you have an increase in gatherings and family gatherings. And when you have an increase in family gatherings, if they're not being canceled, there will be another surge. It's inevitable over the next couple of weeks. So I know your statistics are based on what's happened so far. Let's see what happens over the next week, and let's see if those numbers go down a little bit. It's always great to talk to you. Good luck on your legislation. I hope it works out for you. Robert Sinclair, AAA Northeast. Next on Jersey Matters.
Many of us are missing those long summer days right about now, but for some people it's more serious, with the decrease in sunlight triggering a condition known as seasonal affective disorder. I'm Sherry Carabin, and coming up on Jersey Matters, I'll tell you more about this health issue, its symptoms and treatments.